Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to the Midwest makes no sense. I've not done too many reactions on this region. I think it's one of the regions in the US that I've probably looked at the least. But in terms of it making no sense, I don't know what this is hinting at. We're going to see. This is a video that's a few years old, so hopefully it's not too outdated. I mean, not too much can really change in terms of the land that the Midwest is in like a 3-year time frame, but yeah, we're going to check this out. Hopefully going to enjoy. If you're from here, I guess let me know your thoughts throughout and then after this video is done to see if there's a fair representation or whatever, because I'm assuming this is sort of coming from the angle of the Midwest is just a confusing state. There's stuff to do with it that make no sense. But yeah, we're going to check this out and jump into this reaction.
Explain by leaving a like and a comment, sharing this video, and
So
by
Brit.
subscribing to the channel. Huge parts of the United States of America tend to be given a nickname or title which is a reference to their geographical location. Most of the time, these names make a good deal of sense. For example, the part of...
Wait, is this going to literally solely be to do with Midwest? Because the Midwest is like... Wait, the Midwest is like... Oh god. Is this the Midwest? Or is this the Midwest? I'd assume like this sort of region here is the Midwest because it's more western. But I swear this is called the Midwest. I forgot.
The USA, which houses New England and states like New York and New Jersey, is often referred to collectively as the Northeast because, you guessed it, it's in the Northeast. Then we have the Pacific Northwest, which includes states like Oregon and Washington, and has that name because it's in the northwest of the country and is by the Pacific Ocean. Once again, this makes all the sense in the world. Even a term like the Deep South, in reference to the southernmost states like Louisiana and Alabama, makes a lot of sense too. These terms are all great, accurate, and you really don't need me to explain them all to you. Yet there is one US geographic name for a chunk of the USA, which leaves me baffled and a lot more confusing than the rest. That being the term of the Midwest. Whether you live in...
That is a very strange name because it's not really... It's not in the West at all. Surely the Mid-East. Like, that would make more sense.
USA or not, chances are you've heard of the Midwest. It's the part of the USA which is often seen as being a tad more rural, with something of a slower lifestyle than the busy metropolises of the coasts. But where exactly is the Midwest? Well, this isn't universally agreed upon. Some states are seen as undoubtedly being Midwestern, while others are sometimes thrown into the mix too. There isn't a defined area that is the Midwest by any means. In fact, one source said the Midwest is more an idea than a concrete geographic region. Maybe even something of a state of mind. One source, however, has decided to define the exact area of the Midwest, that being the US Census Bureau. According to them, the region that they have dubbed the Midwest includes the 12 states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. The Census Bureau also breaks the Midwest into two smaller regions of the West North Central,
West North Central, East North Central. Okay.
And the East North Central. And while this is what they say, this is of course still debated. CityLab, part of Bloomberg which deals more with cities, actually held a survey asking people if they believe they lived in the Midwest or not, with more people saying yes being people in cities like Chicago, St. Louis, and Omaha. What I'm sure you can gather from all this is that the Midwest isn't really defined by strict boundaries. But according to the US Census Bureau and their strict borders, the region of the Midwest has a population of around 70 million people. This is around the same size as the population of the entire UK.
Holy shit.
So this region houses a significant chunk of the USA's 330 million plus residents. Yet despite how big and populated this region of the USA is, that name of the Midwest makes little to no sense. While it is somewhat in the middle of the country, with some of the broader states of the region being pretty much in the middle of the country, it isn't western at all. Like even its westernmost point isn't all that much to the west. A more fitting name would be something like the center north, kind of to the east but not fully in the northeast.
That's
which,
very true.
granted, is a bit of a mouthful but much more accurate than the name of the Midwest. Yet that pretty inaccurate name is the one that has stuck around. And while this name might not make all that much sense when we look at a modern map of the USA, in the past this name was way more logical. As I'm sure you know.
Oh, that's very true. That is. I know what this is going to go to now. This is going to go to now. I assume before a lot of the western states became states, that was realistically the location that it was in. So actually, that does make sense. I take back what I said.
You know, the country we call the USA didn't always consist of the 50 states we know today. In fact, Hawaii, the newest state, only joined the Union in 1959. That's in the lifetime of people who could be watching this very video. Since the country declared independence from the British in 1776 and subsequently gained it in 1783, more and more land has come under the red, white and blue banner and become states. As mentioned, it was in 1783 when the USA was finally recognized as an independent country after the Revolution. At this time, the country looked more like this. These are the original 13 colonies, which became the first 13 states of the USA. This is why the OG flag has just 13 stars. These initial 13 colonies/states are New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The rest of the land we now know as the USA was either under the rule of other European powers or had been reserved for the land's indigenous people. Though of course the USA got to work on claiming more and more of this land as their own fairly quickly. By 1787, the USA got its hands on land to the northwest of the original 13 states. This area consisted of some Native American land and part of the British province of Quebec. Yeah, this land that is between the Canadian-American border now was once under control of a singular power in the past. Under control of the USA, however, this region was named the Northwest Territory, and this made all the sense in the world. It was quite literally the northwesternmost point of the USA at that time. This Northwest Territory housed the modern states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, and parts of Minnesota. These are of course all states that are now seen as being pretty definitively Midwestern. Yet as we know, the nation wouldn't stay this size and shape. More land in North America became part of the USA, eventually spanning from sea to shining sea, as the song goes. While expanding, the USA still had possession of the area they dubbed the Northwest Territory back in 1787. However, that name was a little outdated. This land wasn't the North.
Oh, so they did change the name from the Northwest to the Midwest. So theoretically, they could have just changed it completely. But maybe people were they were used to the west part of the region. I don't know. That's very fascinating how they changed half of it.
Northwest of the country anymore. It was kind of just in the middle of the land. This resulted in that territory needing a name change, with the term of Midwest being landed on. The earliest written evidence we have of this name comes from 1894, so not even 10 years since the Northwest Territory was first established as part of the USA. There isn't a defined origin of where this name came from. It was probably a natural evolution of language of sorts. The name was formed most likely by keeping part of the original name and adding a new word to help it make a tad more sense. The new word which was added to this name was of course mid, in reference to it being more in the middle of the land, while the west part is a reference to that old name of Northwest Territory. What also could have happened was this land could have been referred to as the mid-northwest, with the north part of that name being dropped over time. Whatever the case, I feel like this was an instance of the wrong part of the old name sticking around.
Yeah.
If this area kept the north part
That's
of the
true.
old Northwest Territory name and became known as the Mid-North, that would be way more accurate in regards to its modern geography. This somewhat reminds me of how American football got its somewhat inaccurate name too. Initially it was called American Rugby Football, as it was the American variant of the British sport called rugby football, more commonly known as just rugby. Yet eventually they dropped the rugby part of the name and just called it American football, and even just football. It would have made way more sense if this sport was known as American Rugby, as it's much more akin to the original rugby than the original sport which is now called football around the globe.
I thought that's going to piss some people off.
But known properly as association football, or soccer if you're that way inclined. We have a whole video about it. Tangent aside, I also read a theory that was being called the Midwest before the USA even expanded more so. This theory explains to us that it was dubbed the Midwest because while it was the northwesternmost point of the USA, they knew there was much more land out there, and in turn they knew that the northwest part of their own country was in reality more in the middle of the much larger landmass. While all that explains to us how that original northwestern territory became known as the Midwest, why have so many other states also become known as the Midwest, which are far removed geographically from the original Northwest Territory? This has seemingly happened because the concept of the Midwest has become somewhat synonymous with the concept of the American Heartland. This idea of the American Heartland is the concept of a more rural, traditional America, full of farmers plowing the land, traditional values, and acres upon acres of corn. I imagine the area has become somewhat romanticized too, especially especially for those who live in the hustle and bustle of places like New York City or Los Angeles on the coasts. Even outside of the states, there's an allure of the American heartland. It's become somewhat enigmatic, like what actually goes on here. As a Brit, I for one would love to go see some random small American town in the heartland. This heartland concept can be found in the OG Midwestern states like Michigan and Wisconsin, as well as many of the other states that surround the initial area too. States like Missouri and Nebraska fit the bill of being.
They fit it as well. I mean, that's probably stretching it a little bit, but like if you ask people, like he said he showed some sort of graph for people that consider themselves part of the Midwest. If you're from these states, would you say you're a Midwesterner or not? Like, I assume it probably depends who you ask, and maybe if you're in a larger city, maybe they'll say yes. But for example, if you live like here, right? You live right here. Why would you feel? You'd probably feel a lot more closer to people in like this region than people in this region. You know, like it's such a big distance away. So it's quite hard to judge, but
in the American heartland as well. With the concept of the Midwest and the concept of the American heartland being more or less one and the same to many people, it has allowed other states, which have been dubbed as being part of the American heartland, also being dubbed the Midwest, despite the fact they are nowhere close to the original Northwest territory. This all really leans into the idea of the Midwest being more an idea or state of mind rather than a set location.
Okay.
This name of the Midwest might seem odd to us now, especially with how much land it now covers, but in the past it made a tad more sense. What's really strange is the fact that there's a much more accurate name for this land, which was once used officially too. Up until 1984, the US Census Bureau referred to this area as the North Central region. This name makes so much sense in regards to its location, yet for some reason
didn't stick, man. People didn't want it. It's fair enough.
It was changed to Midwest. If we were to look into other potential more accurate names for this land, we could call it the American Heartland, which it is considered to be a part of. Likewise, names like the Rust Belt and Corn Belt are applied to parts of the Midwest, as these US belts are partially in this area too. My favourite alternative name, however, has to be the Old Northwest. This name is applied to the land which was once part of the Northwest Territory, but we could use it for the larger Midwest too. I just find it quite evocative in some way. Plus, the USA has loads of places with new in their name, so why not throw an old one in there too? Yet, I doubt any of these names will gain much traction. The most popular name for this huge chunk of the USA will probably be the Midwest for quite some time, despite the fact it makes pretty much no sense. This video topic was suggested by...
It does make sense historically, but it is definitely... It's a very fascinating sort of backstory to it, because it's just... It doesn't fully make sense, but at the same time it does make sense. Fun fact, the Midwest longitude is actually partially in the middle of the Western Hemisphere. Damn. I think when you're from the US and know our history of westward expansion, you don't really question the name Midwest. I didn't. Yeah, that's fair enough. And I sort of clocked halfway through this video. Oh, actually, that does somewhat make sense. At one point, this is definitely the most western state, you know? So it does make sense, to be fair. And it's a cool name. And I guess people are going to be so used to it, there's no way you're going to change it, and why would you, you know? It's got his historical backstory, and yeah, pretty interesting. I didn't realise this video was just going to focus on the actual term Midwest, but hey, I'm still here for it, man. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this reaction, and until next time, subscribe. Peace.